Alright, so back with another video yet again about R. Kelly and Joycelyn Savage. My bad, I horrendously murdered. That's not a good word for this situation. Oh, God. I did not pronounce her name correctly in the last video, so I just wanted to correct that. It is Joycelyn Savage, not Jocelyn Savage. Either way, neither here nor there. Is that the saying? Joycelyn Savage. I wanted to just point out a couple of things first off about not only about her but also how the parents play into not even play into, but how they are utilized in the abuse towards the victim, which leads to the isolation from family members, like what's happening with Joycelyn Savage right now. So I think that's an important thing to look at as a part of this, because I know a lot of people were, making claims that the parents were, selling their daughters for money. That supposedly, allegedly was a part of the manipulative tactics, which I believe that R. Kelly was using to not only isolate the victims, but also to smear multiple things. Smear the parents' characters to make them look like the, bad guy. And in doing that, he's deflecting and getting the heat off of him onto someone else and pointing the finger. If you're pointing the finger at the parents, you're not pointing the finger at R. Kelly. That was the objective. And that's what people don't understand. And I definitely believe that is a huge part of the manipulative process that is common, that abusers tend to talk shit about, or, find either, insidious ways, or it sounds like R. Kelly used pretty direct ways to just essentially be like, you've got to delete them off your shit. It sounds like he used a lot of fear tactics. Like, he was very physically abusive, it sounds like. So a lot of his control tactics worked as well as they did, because these women were terrified of getting beat. They didn't want to get beat, so they'd rather shut the fuck up than get beat. And it does get to that point. So, and I think people also minimize and downplay, like, oh, like, couldn't they have left and all this other shit. When you find out the type of control, and I'm going to show you in Azriel Clary's interview, Azriel, God damn it, Azriel Clary's interview with Gayle King, she very clearly lays out the ridiculous things that these women were required to do in order to allow R. Kelly to be able to keep tabs on them at all times. And it sounded very extreme. They would have to tap. She said they would have to knock whenever they came out of their room, just to let him know just to let him know where they were in the house. He needed to know where they were, what they were doing, who they were with. He controlled it all. He controlled the whole narrative. And so what people don't understand is a part of that narrative involves the parents, because these were underage girls. And so, of course, people are going to look at the parents and be like, oh my gosh, how could... What people don't understand is that the parents were also manipulated. And people will look at that and be like, but they're adults. How could they not have known? And how could they... I'm telling you, these abusive narcissists like R. Kelly are very, very good at what they do. And not only that, but part of it, and I will probably show a clip of this because these are not my words or information. I did get this from an interview. I think it was a lawyer who was saying this, that part of what, and this is true for usually any predator like Jeffrey Epstein, same fucking thing. The reason that the abuse was so successful and able to continue in the way that it was had a lot more to do with, I mean, he was not only controlling these girls, he was controlling the people around him who were working for him, and then they were manipulating. So you have to understand that abuse is much more than just one-on-one, especially when you're talking about somebody as powerful and rich as, you know, people like R. Kelly, Jeffrey Epstein, Harvey Weinstein. You know, they had all sorts of backup plans upon backup plans, and that's what the fuck she talked about, just to prevent, you know, himself from being caught. And Jeffrey Epstein had the same shit. That's why he was, you know, had police friends. Again, these people have friends in high places. And R. Kelly did as well. He was friends with law enforcement who would call these girls on FaceTime, I guess Azriel was saying, and check in on them, do wellness checks, just to, you know, again, keep tabs on them through other people. So this was made possible by essentially, so narcissists use something, this is a tactic that they use where they will utilize the people around them to further manipulate and abuse the people that they're victimizing. And those people, they may have been paid. I do not believe the parents. They were talking about doing business deals with him, but they stated allegedly that he turned all of those down. And it sounds like for him it was more about the control. It was more about the control and the abuse and the sexual perversion and like sexual predator nature of him that really was driving this. Part of what predators utilize is something called the VAC model, and I'm going to make a whole separate video on this, so I'm not going to tell too much here, but I will say this is part of that. So it stands for vulnerability, accessibility, credibility, and that is what predators go for. That's what they target. So they look for people who are vulnerable. So for example, minors, children, they're vulnerable, elderly, the disabled, women, I guess, women with men in a heterosexual relationship is more so what I was thinking about, just in terms of like size and yeah, I mean, and that can vary also. So either way, and then really what we're looking at here with the parents and Azriel Clary and Joycelyn Savage is accessibility. So predators have to find a way to easily gain access to their victims. And a lot of the ways, or a lot of the times, the way that they do that is through the parents. Because what better way to, you know, get the child alone than to gain trust in the parents? That's part of the manipulative process, and that's what people don't understand. They just think, I don't know what the fuck people think, but so I wanted to point this part out because she lays this out beautifully. Okay. All right. So she was quoted in this video saying, "I feel like people will always try to make it a parent's fault." Clary told King, "But my parents left me with an adult, and none of us have ever been touched or molested or taken advantage of. blah, blah, blah. They trusted me to be with an adult. Okay, these are her words. I watched the parents' interview, and one of the things that the father said was not that they trusted him. So this was from her perspective. So she believed her parents trusted him. When the parents were interviewed later, the father, explicitly, specifically, and very blatantly came out very quickly and stated that he never trusted R. Kelly. He trusted his daughter. He trusted what he had taught his daughter. And he's not blaming his daughter. He's just saying he trusted. Okay, let me give him some compassion here, because, again, a lot of people misunderstand abuse and the way it works. He trusted his daughter in a naive sense, because the thing is no matter how smart you are, that's a common misconception. No matter how well you parent your children, like, anybody can become a victim of abuse or can be groomed. That's why it's so insidious, the manipulative process of seeking their victims out. So basically her father saying that, I think, was essentially admitting to the fact that he was naive in thinking that his good parenting could protect her from a predator. And the fact of the matter is, that's not how it works. That's why I made this channel, to point out the signs so that people can protect themselves and protect their children from shit like this in the future. Because this is, again, we see this pattern over and over again with these predators. And so her father and them were naive and thought that they could trust their daughter based on what they had taught her. And the other additional component to that, I don't know if the interview's on here. Let me see. That's her interview. But I kind of wanted people to see the parents' interview, which I think, yes, it is on here. Beautiful. Okay, hold on. So I'm about to do this, and then we'll go back down there. All right, so moving on. So, all right. Azriel Clary's parents assumed they were entering a business relationship. Again, so we just talked about accessibility. So predators try to find some fake manipulative way to make the parents interested and also at the same time distract them. So part of that was pretending like they were entering into a business relationship, and her parents were presenting business deals to him, thinking that this was all business and money and music related. So I think maybe that's where the manipulative twist came in, that R. Kelly, and this often happens with abusive people and narcissistic people, because they're manipulative as fuck, so they will take things out of context. So, for example, in the interview where he said, oh, you sold your daughter for whatever, that's manipulative as fuck. He's basically talking about, like, they were doing other business deals that had literally nothing to do with Azriel. They literally thought that Azriel was doing music with him, and then the business deals were a completely separate thing. It was like business ventures that they were presenting to him that he was just shutting down because that was not his purpose of engaging with them. His purpose of engaging with them was to distract the hell out of them so that they thought that they were doing business with R. Kelly. And again, R. Kelly took that and manipulated that into, they were selling their daughter. No. And the business had nothing to do with the daughter. Like, the business deals that they were presenting had nothing to do with the daughter. He manipulated it, took it out of context, and meshed the two together when they were totally separate. Oh, man. Okay. So, all right. So, accessibility. Okay. They thought it was strictly music. They really thought it was strictly music. Also, she talks about how they met him. And he manipulated them. And this is a part that I really wanted to point out because, okay, she says, I think that a lot of people, especially in the urban community, they just kind of turned away from it because he had the most iconic music you could ever think of. Clary said, in their minds, he got off. It doesn't matter what you say because he got off. And I agree. I've talked to many people in general who just want to go and back R. Kelly. Just, I don't know, because they heard this manipulative story about the parents selling the daughter. I mean, you're believing somebody who's clearly mentally out of his fucking mind. So, and then here's the thing. I also want to point that out. That's part of the smear campaign too, is that now he's spinning this tale that the parents are doing this to their daughter, and that's spreading all across the United States and maybe even the world. Shit. So this is like a United States-wide smear campaign ran by R. Kelly that has random people, maybe you who's listening to this, believing that this, not mentally healthy individual is, not innocent, but that the parents are basically the bad ones, and he's, yeah. All right, so let's see. I just want to show the part about, yeah, so people need to understand this too. Like, once she turned 18, a part of the abusive process is, or the grooming process rather, is isolating the victim. Always. That's number one. In every abusive situation that I know of or have been in my goddamn self, that was always, or if I was around a predator, I was caught, I caught some of them. Anyway, that's stories for another day. Point is, that's a typical thing that happens, whether it happens physically, location-wise, where they will actually isolate your location, but also they get you to where you're spending only time with them, and they are insane. And so they're sitting there spinning tales about, R. Kelly probably was sitting there spinning tales about the parents and all this other shit, and then, cutting her off, controlling her, and basically suppressing her based on the fear that he created with all the abuse. Yeah, okay. I want to show the parents' interview now, just so you can see this part.
The parents of one of R. Kelly's live-in girlfriends say she is trapped in what they call a monstrous situation. Only on CBS This Morning, Alice and Azriel Clary reveal why they are now afraid for their daughter's, Azriel's, life. It is their first interview since the scathing Lifetime documentary Surviving R. Kelly. Azriel Clary met the singer back in 2015. She was 17 at the time. Her parents claim that Kelly promised to help launch her singing career. They say they have learned since then that his real interest, in their words, was a little more sinister. I spoke with them yesterday about how this all started, and they say that just 3 days after meeting R. Kelly, their daughter went to a hotel to meet him without their permission. They were furious and went knocking on hotel doors to find her.
What she said was...
So let me just pause right there. So who even knew that part of the story? I didn't even know that shit until today. So, again, teenagers do shit without telling their parents. And again, despite how well you parent your kids, I mean, what 17-year-old's not going to run off to a hotel room to go meet a famous singer with their underdeveloped thinking? Come on now.
This was an audition. Why wouldn't you trust me? Y'all would think I would put myself in a predicament and not call y'all if something wasn't right.
She's saying you're messing up my chances.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what she said. This is my opportunity. This is my big break.
Tempers eventually cooled, and the Clarys say they actually developed a professional relationship with R. Kelly over the next few months, even pitching various business deals, all of which he rejected.
What's going on?
The Clarys say the singer had his own proposal. Let Azriel join him on his tour full-time.
He flew us into Chicago. We sat with him in his studio. We met with him. And he basically told us, I'm starting tour. Basically, y'all need to make a decision.
Azriel had dreams of becoming a singer, according to her parents, who say she dealt with personal struggles, including a suicide attempt following a bad breakup. That was before she met R. Kelly. She eventually gave her parents an ultimatum. She says, if you don't allow me to go, I will try to take my own life again, or I will run away.
Mm-hmm. I don't want to call her bluff on it because I know she just attempted this previously. I'm thinking in my head, she only got 3 more months. She's going to be 18, so she can do what she wants. And she really carry out this. And then now I'm living with regret for the rest of my life.
Guys, people will still say, you're allowing your 17-year-old daughter, who at the time is underage, to go with R. Kelly. The perception is that he preys on underage girls. Did that give you any kind of pause whatsoever?
That gave me pause. I mean, it gave me awareness, but you talking about a young lady that's raised by 2 parents going
So you're
to
saying you trusted her?
I didn't trust him. What I trusted was I raised my child right. I trust my daughter will be honest with us. And this was strictly her music. R. Kelly had a platform as big as music can ever give somebody. I didn't see the label stop supporting him.
And you told me that you saw him working with other young women.
Yes.
Last week, Kelly blamed Azriel's parents for their own estrangement.
What kind of father, what kind of mother will sell their daughter to a man?
3 months before Azriel turned 18, the Clarys signed a letter giving their consent for her to go on Kelly's tour and stay with a woman named Valerie Denise Payton. Who is Valerie Payton?
It ain't R. Kelly. It's not Robert Kelly.
But does she work with R. Kelly?
So he's about to tell us basically this is a part of the manipulative tactic of using these other people as pawns, pretending like their daughter's going to be protected. Oh, okay.
She supposed to work for the label. We found out later on that she works for R. Kelly.
But at the time you signed this, you thought she was...
He told us it was someone affiliated with the music label.
From Sony.
Okay.
Correct.
So you thought she would be a chaperone for your daughter.
That's what she was supposed to have been.
Okay.
And we found out later there was no truth in that.
I think in retrospect, many of these parents were too trusting.
Michael Avenatti is representing the Clarys. He claims R. Kelly used his celebrity status to manipulate the families and the women. If what you're alleging is true, how is he able to get away with this for this period of time?
He surrounded himself with a bunch of people, a bunch of yes men and women that would provide assurance and comfort to these parents relating to the fact that their daughters were going to be safe, that their daughters were going to be looked after, that all of this was legit.